Hello and welcome to another Maven Analytics data drill. In this episode, we will be tackling data drill number 5, movie metrics. So if you would like to attempt the drill first, you may do so. Otherwise, we may begin. So we've been given a table of Netflix users and another with their viewing activity, including the movie name, date started it, and whether they finished it. Your task is to engineer these new features for each user based on their activity. So date from the first movie they finished, name of the first movie they finished, the date of the last movie they finished, the name of the last movie they finished, the movie started, and the movie's finished. So we are given this table, the user activity table, with the following columns and the examples. And then we have the users table over here. Yeah, and then we are supposed to create the new columns on the right side of this users table. Then the solution question is how many users have Fight Club as the film they've seen. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so here we are in Tabular Editor. And the first thing we need to do is define a measure. Find a measure, well, find a metric, sorry, called count movies. Count movies, which is basically just going to count the number of movies, because we might need it when you're troubleshooting. So it's good to just have it. Then we're going to call the values function and then pass in the movie name. So what's happening here is that when we call the values function, as you can see in the explanation, it says it returns a string. Sorry, you pass in a string, and then it will return a table of one column. So this is going to give us just the movie names. And then we're going to count rows, and then we're going to wrap it around the calculate function. So it's going to count the movies based for all the users, whether they're finished or they haven't. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to define a measure to get the first date. And for this, we say calculate minimum dates. Then we're going to say finish activity is equal to 1. So what this means is that we want to get the finished movies, all the finished movies first. Once we get all the finished movies, then we want to get the minimum date of the finished movies, but this will be done for each user because we are wrapping it around the calculate, so there's a context transition there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to define another measure called first name. Sorry. First name, and then what we're going to do here is create a variable called minimum date, which will store first date. Okay, so here we're just getting the minimum date. So there's no need to calculate it again. You can just reference the measure, first date, and then here, going to return, calculate the maximum movie name, and then we're going to say the date is equal to the minimum date, and then finished we equals to 1. So we just want the finished movies. Okay, so here this will return a table of the finished movies, and then we're only going to get the minimum date. So I think this will give us all the movies that first watched, and then we're going to get the max. Yeah, so once we do that, we're going to get the first name. Sorry, we're going to get the maximum for the movie name so that we can get the name of the movie. Then we're going to define another measure. Then we're going to call this last date, which is basically the kind of inverse of first date. Since it's the same, we can just copy this expression that we have up here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change it to a max function. With the last date, and then for the last name, we're just going to copy again what we have up here. But then we're just going to get like the opposite of what we're calculating. So instead of min, we're going to get the max. The first, we're going to say the last. And then here we're going to change it to min. And then here we're going to change it to max again. Okay. Then after, we're going to calculate the movies started to get all the movies that the person has started. To do that, we have to calculate count rows from the activity table, and then filter is going to be finished equals to 0. So all the unfinished movies. Then to get the finished movies, we just do the same thing, but we just inverse the calculation. So so instead of saying 0, we're going to say 1. Okay. So then after that means we're finished with our definitions. We can start querying semantic model and get a summarized table. So we're going to say var the variable table is equal to summarized columns, and this is we're going to build out a summary table with the user ID. Okay, and then we're going to the movies, first date, first name, last date, last name, movies started, and movies finished. Okay. Then I'm going to create a variable called y, which is basically a filter. I'm going to filter the table T, the summary table T, and get the last name equals to the movie Fight Club. Get all the movies, all the users that last watched the movie Fight Club. Then we're going to return, T, and then then we're going to return y. Just in case we need to see something, maybe we can take a look. Then we're going to count rows here. Count rows, and then we're going to count the table, count rows for the table y, and then we're going to lastly order by count movies. Okay, and then we're going to sort by descending order. Okay, so before we proceed, maybe it'd be wise to see what the table looks like. So when we query the table, this is what it looks like. Please note, this is like, I've done this in the same table, and I know it's a bit different from what they were asking. So they were asking that this be done in the users table. So the columns would be added in this. Then for this particular tutorial, I've just done it in the same table. But if I was to do it in the other table, then I would use the, I think I'd use the related table function, which if you try and maybe see the, I'm trying to see the, oh yeah, the explanation. So it returns the related tables filtered so that it only includes the related rows. So that's how I'd grab the data from the other table. But I guess we'll just proceed because we're already come this far. So it looks like it's working. And then let's check Y, which is the filtered table for Fight Club. And you can see these are the users, 18, 20, and 2 that last watched Fight Club. And then, so let's get the answer now. We have 3. So it looks like 3 people, 3 users have last watched the movie Fight Club. Okay, so let's try and put that in the website. Okay, so here we are in the Maven Analytics data drills website, movie metrics. So we do submit 3. Yeah. It says, nice job, you nailed it. The solution was correct. So yeah, that was the correct answer. And thank you for watching. I guess I'll see you in the next video. Bye.